Hungarian Folk Tales. The Wolf's Joke. Once upon a time, there lived a man called Uncle George Fox. This Uncle George Fox had a horse, a sheep, and a pig. But he did not give them anything to eat all winter. They were so skinny by springtime that their bones were sticking out. He ushered them through the gate and said, "Off you go, you'll make good food for wolves, and why didn't you grow fat in wintertime?" But how could they if he didn't feed them? This was overheard by a wolf. When the horse walked past him, the wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said." "You may eat me if you will, but can't you see I'm all skin and bone? What is it that you want to eat on me? If you let me go on my way, I'll grow fat upon the hillside during the summer, and then you'll have a real feast on me." Well, the wolf let the horse go, and off it went. Then the pig came. The wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said. What is it that you want to eat on me? I'm nothing but skin and bones. If you let me go, I'll grow fat upon the hillside and return with 6 piglets. That will make a real feast for you." The wolf let the pig go too, and the pig went off. Then the sheep came. The wolf said, "Stop right now and let me eat you. That's what your owner said. What is it that you want to eat on me? I'm nothing but skin and bones. If you let me go, I'll grow fat upon the hillside and make a real feast for you when I return." The wolf let it go too and did nothing all summer but wait for the 3 animals to return as they said they would. He lounged about, moving from bush to bush all summer. Autumn came, and one day he saw the pig trot along with 6 piglets. 6 lovely piglets. The wolf saw them from under a bush. He rejoiced at the thought of the feast he was about to have. He emerged from under the bush and went to greet them. "Jolly good you didn't deceive me. I've been looking forward to eating you all this time, and now I'll have my feast." Then the pig said, "If I had meant to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way, but there's one small problem." "What is it?" "There was no one up on the hillside, and so the piglets haven't been christened yet. They ought to be christened first because it's not good to eat them like this." "Where can they be christened?" "Here in the village. The priest will do it." "Oh, all right then. Take them to the priest, have them christened, and bring them back." The pig set off with the piglets in tow. Then the pig turned back and said to the wolf, "Come here, let me whisper in your ear what the name of each one will be. You'd better know." The wolf did as bid, holding its ear close to the pig's mouth. The pig was in high spirits, grabbed the wolf's ear and began to tug away at it. The 6 piglets followed suit and almost tore the wolf to pieces. He could hardly manage to get away. They then went off and the sheep came. "I hope you won't deceive me," the pig did. "If I had wanted to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way." "Stop then and let me eat you. At least you'll make a good feast for me." "You may eat me if you will, but there's a slight problem." "What is it?" "You know something. If you begin to chew me, it will hurt me, but it will also give you a toothache. Stand in that hole, hold your mouth wide open so I can hop into it, and you can just swallow me." The wolf stood in the hole and opened his mouth. The sheep prepared itself, took a nice long run, and hit the wolf so hard that it somersaulted like a ball. Then the sheep leapt over it and ran off. Then came the horse. The wolf stood in front of it and said, "At least you had better not deceive me. 2 animals have already done so." "If I had wanted to deceive you, I wouldn't have come this way." "All right, stop then and let me eat you." "You may eat me if you will, but there's a tiny problem." "What is it?" "A maiden is getting married in the next village, and I've been asked to take the bride around. When that's over, I'll come here, and you can eat me." "Well, I wouldn't mind seeing that for myself. I mean, how you take the bride around. Come and see for yourself. How can I? Hop on my back. So the wolf sat on the horse's back and the horse took it into town. A man in the village was known by the name of Uncle Andrew Duncan. In summertime, there were always men playing cards in his yard. They were playing cards as usual when the horse passed in front of the gate with the wolf on his back. The people saw the wolf on the back of the horse and began to shout, "Look there, a wolf on the back of a horse! Look there, a wolf on the back of a horse!" Each one of them reached for a stick or an axe. The horse slowed down so that the people could catch up with it. This they did, and the poor wolf had a hard job trying to get away without being battered to death. There was a man in the village called Uncle Pete Kalan. He was gathering wood in the forest when he saw the wolf approaching. So Uncle Pete Kalan swiftly hid behind a big tree so the wolf wouldn't see him. The wolf happened to sit down under that very tree, keeping his eye on the village in the distance. Then he began to say to himself, "It serves me right. I was so foolish. I wish someone would hit me right now." Uncle Pete Kalan hit him so hard with the axe that the wolf was almost knocked dead. "Heavens," the wolf said. "It was only meant to be a joke." Hungarian Folk Tales. Peter and Paul. Once upon a time, there was a poor man. He was as poor as a church mouse. Children, he had many though, but apart from them, he had nothing but a single cockerel. Next door to him there lived a rich man. He was so rich that he had absolutely no idea of all that he had. His yard was full of hens, cockerels and fine farm animals. It happened one day that poor man Peter's cockerel went over to rich man Paul's yard. The cockerel went over to the hens because he was so bored all alone in Peter's yard. The rich man, greedy Paul, saw this and he said to the poor man, "Listen here, Peter. Do something with this cockerel. Either kill it or sell it. But get it out of my yard, otherwise I'll batter it and it'll be of no use to you anymore. I don't want it to come over to my yard." Poor man Peter was desperate. What should he do? He thought hard. He'd kill it and cook it for his children, but his children had never eaten meat in their lives before, and they would get used to the taste of meat and want it at every meal. Oh well, he thought, I'll take it to my master and give it to him as a gift. Maybe he will give me something in return. So he did just this. And his master said to him, "Hey, Peter, you're a poor man with many children. Wouldn't you have been better off cooking this cockerel for your children at home?" "No, sir," said Peter, "because we're so many at home, there are so many children that one cockerel would never satisfy them all. They'd each just have one bite, and once they had tasted the meat, they'd realise it was better than boiled potatoes or simple soup, and they'd never want to eat those things anymore. They'd always want to eat meat." "All right, Peter. We'll roast this cockerel for dinner today, but I want you to be here to serve it to us." The master had 2 sons, 2 daughters, and a wife. So they were 6. Peter went to their house at midday when dinner was going to be served. There was the roast cockerel on the table. Peter thought hard and began to carve. He reasoned thus: "The master and the lady of the house are the head of the family, so I'll cut the head and the neck off for them. I'll give the 2 wings to the 2 young ladies so they can fly off with more ease when it comes to marrying. The young masters will get the 2 feet so they can run better. And I, poor devil, will make do with what is left. This way he himself had the bulk of the cockerel. The master rewarded Peter for his wisdom. He gave him a horse, a cart, a plough, and everything to go with it, as well as some land to farm as his own. He told him to run his own farm and grow rich on it. Rich man Paul got word of this. He was ever so envious. If his neighbour had been given so many things for 1 single cockerel, how much would the master give him for 5 cockerels, he wondered. Rich man Paul finally made up his mind to take his 5 cockerels to the master. He was so envious. He gave them all as a gift. The master said to rich man Paul, "Listen here, Paul, we'll roast these 5 cockerels for dinner today. I want you to serve us at table. If you fail to divide the roast justly, I'll have you whipped 50 lashes. But if you manage to divide it well, I'll reward you richly." The 5 cockerels were roasted, and none was cut up. They were all in one piece. Rich man Paul went to the master's house, but he couldn't divide the meat justly in any way. Then the master said to his servant, "Go and fetch Peter." So Peter came. "Well, Peter, you'll have to divide these 5 cockerels among us." Peter thought hard. "Well," he said, "I've always believed in the Holy Trinity. This time I'll be guided by it too. I reckon the master and the lady of the house and a cockerel will make a trinity." "By the same token," he said, "the 2 young ladies and a cockerel will make a trinity. The 2 young masters and a cockerel also. So I, poor devil, and 2 cockerels will also make a trinity." This cheeky but shrewd way of dividing the roast made the master and his entire family laugh. The master richly rewarded Peter again and had the rich man Paul whipped as he had pledged. Paul was given 50 lashes and told never to return to the palace again. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Dyer's Apprentice. Once upon a time, there lived a woodcutter with his wife. On a fine spring morning, the woman gave birth to a baby boy. By the time the lad turned 13 years of age, the woodcutter died. The boy and his mother were very poor. Finally, the young boy walked into the village looking for a job. There he came upon a dyer who hired him as an apprentice. He earned only very little as an apprentice, but he always gave every penny to his mother. Suddenly one morning he turned to his mother. "Mother, I had a dream last night." "Tell me all about it, my son." "I cannot talk about my dream before it is time, even if my life depends on it," he said. "Well, all right." In the morning the boy went to see his master, told him that he had had a dream, but he never revealed what his dream was about. The master got angry and started beating his apprentice. The boy ran out to the street, but the master rushed after him with a whip in his hand. At that very moment in time, the king was passing by in his gilded carriage, and he called to the master, "Hey you, why are you beating that young man?" The master told the king everything one by one. Finally, the king ordered him to hand over the boy to him, and he would find out what the dream was all about. Once they got to the king's court, the young lad was literally bathed in milk and honey. 3 weeks later, the king summoned the boy and asked him how he liked being in the palace. "I quite like it here," replied the boy. "Well, you see, son, I am trying my best to please you," said the king. "What about pleasing me a little?" "Oh, your majesty, I will do whatever I can to please you, but what can I do if it isn't possible? All right then, all you should do is tell me what you dreamt the other night." "Oh, your majesty, that is an impossible task, because even if you take my life, I cannot reveal my dream to you before it comes true." And so it went on and on for 7 years, but all was in vain. Finally, the king lost all hope and patience and had the boy walled in. In the meantime, the king's daughter also grew up to be a beautiful girl, and she fell in love with the boy. She stole a purse filled with gold coins from her father and gave it to the bricklayer. She instructed the man to leave a small opening in the wall. Through that small opening, she gave food to the young boy 3 times a day. She kept feeding him every day for another 7 years. In the meantime, the Turkish Sultan announced he wished to marry the princess, but the old king did not want to hear about it. The Sultan sent 3 identical donkeys to the king, asking him to identify the exact age of each animal. Otherwise, he would attack and destroy the king's country. The king was frightened and he ran around asking everybody for a solution, but nobody was able to tell the exact age of the donkeys. As the daughter was carrying lunch to the boy behind the wall one day, she told him what had happened. In the end, the boy told her not to worry. He told her to go home and sleep through the night. And when she awoke the next morning, she should tell her father the following: "Give the donkeys oats that are 1, 2, and 3 years old. The animals will eat the oats that correspond with their own age." And so it happened. The king was happy that he finally managed to save his country. But the Turk just couldn't rest. He wrote another letter to the king with the following message: "This time I am sending you a stick with bludgeons on both ends." He wrote, "If you cannot tell which is the upper and which is the lower end of the stick, I am going to have you decapitated." The king's joy suddenly turned to sorrow. In the meantime, the princess dreamt that if they tied a single hair around the middle of the stick and lifted it, the lower end, which was thicker, would bend towards the ground. They immediately sent a letter with the answer to the Sultan. The Sultan was so angry he nearly had a fit, but he could still not rest. He sent another letter plus 3 penknives, asking the king to identify which of the knives belonged to a gentleman, a soldier, and to a peasant. Once again, the princess dreamed up the solution. She said that the knives should be stuck into the ground next to a burning fire. The one that smells like garlic belongs to a peasant. The one that smells of scent belongs to a gentleman. And finally, the one that oozes blood must belong to the soldier. The king was overjoyed and sent a letter to the Turkish Sultan. The Sultan never sent another letter. The king was curious to find out how his daughter always knew the right answers. Finally, his daughter confessed everything, and the king ordered his men to tear down the wall. Everyone was happy, and they held a magnificent wedding in the palace. As they were eating, the king once again asked the apprentice to tell him what his dream was all about. "This was my dream, your majesty," he said, pointing to his bride and the wedding ring. And they all lived happily ever after.